From a crazy stranger chase to a werewolf hunt, these are Reddit horror stories that will send a chilling shiver down your spine and settle you in for a cozy night. However, grab your favorite blanket, dim the lights, and let's dive into the chilling abyss of terrifying stories. Emergence from doorway. In North Hollywood, California, my cousin and I live together in a nice quiet neighborhood where not even car break-ins happen. Trust me, in Northern Hollywood, there weren't many neighborhoods like that. A few years ago, my next-door neighbor adopted a dog to keep her older dog company while she was at work. I work from home myself, so she would often ask me to let her dogs out around lunchtime, and sometimes once more around 4 p.m. if she would be working late that day. One fateful day, Jillian called me and said she had a meeting after work, so she asked if I could go over twice that day, and I said that was perfectly fine. I went around 12 p.m. the first time, and I think at this point, I should explain the basic layout of Jillian's house. As you walk through the front door, it's a pretty straight shot from the door through the living room and dining room to get to the back door, which obviously leads to the backyard. The bedrooms and bathroom are on the left side of the house, and the kitchen is on the right side. Jillian likes to close all the doors before leaving, so only the dining room and living room are open for the dogs to hang out in. As I made my way through this time, I noticed that all the doors were closed as usual. I greeted the dogs and took them into the backyard to do their business and run around a little. While we were outside, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched from somewhere. I started to feel very uneasy. I had the dogs go back inside. As calmly as I could, I made sure everything was locked up. Then I walked home, and then around 4 p.m., I headed back over for my second visit. As I approached the front door and put the key in, I had this sinking feeling in the middle of my chest. I shrugged it off and went inside so I could take care of the dogs. As I walked over to them, I noticed that one of the bedroom doors was now wide open. I let the dogs out and sort of thought back to my first visit. I was fairly certain that all the doors had been closed. I thought to myself that maybe Jillian had forgotten something and come back to the house briefly while I was away and probably just forgot to tell me. I pulled out my phone and called her up real quick. "Hey, did you come back home earlier? I'm here to let the dogs out and I saw your bedroom door was open." What she said next chilled me to the bone. "No, I'm just getting in my car to head home now." "Why?" I wanted to run and scream, but I decided to act as normal as possible. I didn't know if whoever had opened that bedroom door was still lurking around the property. I told Jillian I was calling the cops and hung up the phone immediately. I let the dogs into the backyard, then went back inside. I announced loudly and calmly as I could, "Bye guys, and see you tomorrow." I exited the house and dialed 911. I heard Jillian's front door open suddenly, and a tall, thin man emerged from the doorway. He began to sprint towards me. I ran as fast as I could towards my home. I opened the door, which was not locked, and slammed the door behind me. I locked the man out, and that's when I heard him call from the other side, "I'm coming for you." Before I could hit the call button, I heard a window break in the kitchen. I realized my cousin was not home, and I had to fend for myself. I ran into my cousin's room and went through his closet, and luckily for me, I found the baseball bat he kept hidden away. I could now hear the man walking around my house, searching for me. He came into my cousin's room and looked under the bed. I stood up from my place in the closet and prepared for him to find me. I was sobbing as quietly as I could and praying I would get a swing in before he got to me. He stood up and made his way over to the closet. He opened the door and I swung at him right away. I smacked him hard in the chest and he fell to the ground. He managed to get right back up and knock the bat out of my hands. He then immediately shoved me to the ground and started dragging me out of the room. In the hallway, we found my cousin standing there with a knife. It turns out he had come home after realizing he'd forgotten his wallet. He rushed the man and stabbed him in the shoulder. The intruder moaned as he fell to the floor, and my cousin kicked him in the face over and over. He told me to call the cops, and just then I heard sirens outside. Jillian had already called the cops after we hung up. She knew it was her crazy ex-husband who had broken into her house, and the cops dragged the man out of my home. He later confessed that he had planned on killing Jillian, and when he saw me there, He decided to kill me and anyone in my house as well. He's not mentally well in the head. If you catch my drift, I hate to think of what would have happened to me if my cousin hadn't forgotten his wallet. When I was a kid, as an early teenager, I had a pretty hard core. It was the werewolf and the wolf phase. They were my favorite animals, and I searched for everything I could find about them or their supernatural cousins. Also, I have autism, so I don't know if that's relevant and may have influenced my interests in any way. As you can imagine, I love the Balto movies, any nature documentaries featuring Arctic wolves, and just about every werewolf media I could find. I even gravitated toward the werewolves in Halloween specials, even when they weren't the main focus of the episode. As much as I was obsessed with this one specific thing, though, I could never really find anyone I could talk about it with on my level. That's when my friend showed me Omegle, an online anonymous chat room where I could talk to anyone about anything. We did this at a sleepover when the host parents went to bed, which, in hindsight, was kind of a bad idea. We didn't really play it safe at all. Not that we cared at that time, being 15 and all. On the main screen, they had the Start Chat button and the button to type in different categories. That way, if you wanted to chat with someone about a specific topic, users online would be filtered, and a potential match who might have typed something similar would come up. Of course, being obsessed with werewolves, I tried typing in werewolves and hit chat. I remember the first chat being something uneventful, like "I love werewolves, cool. What's your favorite werewolf movie?" And the stranger has disconnected. I wasn't discouraged, though. While my friends got bored and moved on to watching a movie, I sat on the floor next to them, going through as many chats as possible, looking for someone I could really connect with. Now, before we move on, please subscribe to our channel, Top Scares, where we tell scary and horror stories. If you are brave enough, don't forget to click on the like button and comment. Let us know if you enjoy these stories and what stories you want next. Werewolf Hunt. It was when they were all getting ready to go to bed that something promising came up. The person immediately started talking about some of the Discovery specials I'd seen and seemed very enthusiastic as well. Pretty soon, we chatted non-stop for over an hour, going back and forth on our favorite tropes. Eventually, though, they asked what state I lived in. I didn't really know how I felt about this because they were strangers on the internet. But then I reasoned they liked werewolves, and they hadn't been weird up to this point. Most importantly, they didn't know what I looked like, or even what part of my state I lived in. I thought it would be okay to tell them. I told them the state I lived in, and the floodgates opened immediately. Messages flooded the chat screen one right after the other, as if they couldn't contain themselves anymore. "Where do you live in that state? Can I come visit you? We can dress up together for Halloween. Please tell me, where do you live? What's your name? What do you look like?" I freaked out and closed on Omegle. After that, I felt overwhelmed and stressed out. I decided that had been a bad idea, and I should go to bed instead. I curled up into my sleeping bag, put my phone face down on the floor, and drifted off anxiously. I didn't mention what happened last night to any of my friends, mostly out of sheer embarrassment. I didn't say anything to my mom or dad either. They would kill me if they knew I was going on the internet to talk with strangers. I was also hesitant to go on Omegle again after, which is probably for the best. The whole incident didn't stop my obsession, though. That Halloween, I went looking for the perfect costume. I was kind of hoping I'd meet someone else who loved them just as much as I did, while trick-or-treating in a less stressful, less weird sort of way. Eventually, I did find what I was looking for. It was a full werewolf costume with a brown furred mask and a jaw that moved when you talked, gloves made to look like clawed hands, and rip-torn clothing, like the classic movies, which was absolutely perfect for my purposes. My friends and I still loved to go trick-or-treating at that point, so we decided to go together. We lived in a pretty populated neighborhood at the time, which meant a lot of houses and a lot of good costumes. It also meant a lot of candy as well. I liked it for most of the night. But right as we were about to head home, I noticed another guy in a werewolf costume walking behind us. He was tall, gangly, and had a black wolf's head with these reflective glassy eyes, kind of like a real wolf. I tried to get a better look through my mask's eye holes, but it wasn't working very well. All I could see was that this guy wasn't trying to catch up with us or get our attention specifically. He was just kind of meandering behind us with no clear intention. This time I mentioned it to my friends, who suggested we take the shorter way home. We ducked between two houses to head back to mine, but the man in the wolf mask didn't seem to mind our little detour. In fact, he picked up the pace as we walked through the yard. One of my friends realized he was trying to cut us off on the other side and panicked, pulling me and our other friend along with her into somebody's private bushes. The leaves scratched up my arms, but the rubber mask kept my face safe at least. We hunkered down, not moving a muscle. I can't remember if I was even breathing. I peeked through a gap in the bush. The man in the mask came around the other side and paused, panting as if he were out of breath. It was surreal, as though I were in my very own horror movie. I was not enjoying this in the slightest. That's when the wolf mask turned our way. Its glassy eyes reflected a sickly yellow light from the streetlight. The way they seemed to pierce directly into me while still looking completely dead was the worst part. I didn't know how well the man could actually see out of this thing given the trouble I was having with my own, but if he could see us at all, he didn't show it instead. The man simply turned away and walked off into the night, his shoulders shaking as if he were laughing or possibly incredibly angry. My friends and I waited for what seemed like hours in that bush to make sure he was really gone. When we felt for sure that the coast was clear, we sprinted out and made our way back to my house. I found comfort in my mask, even as we careened through the dark streets. My parents were confused when we told them what happened, but they told us to stay inside for the rest of the night. They seemed to think that it was an older kid playing a prank on us. Sincerely, that's probably what I think too. Even though my mind flashes back to that weird online conversation I had a short time previously, logically, I know there's probably no way it could be the same creepy person, barring a huge coincidence. But the idea of the person being weird to me online and finding me out in the open is a chilling thought. If you haven't had your fill of chills, dive straight into the next video waiting for you on your screen. The mysterious Penturk accident. Brace yourself for an eerie journey and hit play now if you dare.